Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Online. My name is Jason. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad you decided to make us a part of your weekend. No matter who you are, where you come from, we're so glad you're here. Our vision is to be a safe place for real people to encounter the real Jesus and experience real change. Our hope and our prayer is that no matter who you are or what you've been through, you know that you are loved and you are wanted here. We would love to get to know you better and help you connect with all that's going on. You can do this by going to our website at www.bethel.us or by downloading the Bethel app. You can find our app by searching Bethel Putco in your app store. Both online and in the app, you can fill out a digital connection card. It only takes a minute and it'll help us know how to serve you better. Another way you can connect today is through giving. Your generosity at Bethel directly impacts God's mission to radically change people's lives in Putnam County and beyond. Through the ministries of Bethel and the many local and regional organizations we support, people are able to see the grace of God and how much He loves them. You can always give on our website at bethel.us/give or in the Bethel app. Thank you for partnering with us and making a difference. Well, thanks again for tuning in online today. Know that you are wanted and welcome here, and you are loved. I hope you all have a great day.
Last week, my wife, myself, and my 3 children, we went on a vacation before school started. It was a break, a chance to get a breath of fresh air. It's often a chance for me to think about things that just in the hustle and bustle of life, I don't have a chance to think about. My wife and I have literally, we went to the resort that we stayed in on our honeymoon. We went on a couple vacations there, and then we had kids, and now we go there pretty consistently. Over the years, we've kind of grown fond of the place, not because it's the nicest resort in the world, or not because of perhaps all the facilities, but because of the people who work there. And there are housekeepers, house cleaners who have been there as long as I can remember. And there are people at the front desk, and they greet us by our names. We greet them by their names. They know us and we know them. And we have gotten connected with the people there. And as I watched last week there, the way that they honored the people as they came in, or as they served people, or the way that they would often allow others onto the elevator and step off so that guests had an opportunity to get where they were going, really impressed me. And I noticed that as they did these things, people's attitudes were a little better. As they made people feel special or feel precious, it mattered. And I thought of how, without knowing who most of the people are, without knowing anything about their character or any of their history or what they do, or how they are as a person, their morality, they honored people. And obviously there's a profit motive to that in industry. But I wonder if we as God's people were more honoring of others, if it would entirely change the culture. It's not uncommon to see dishonoring behavior. I mean, someone will post something on social media and then there's a dishonoring comment. There will be leaders speaking and get booed. Last week I saw a little girl throw a shoe at her mother at a public pool. I looked to the guy sitting next to me to see if maybe he had the same thought that I did. And he looked at me and said, "I think my parents would have drowned me for that." And they definitely would have told me to honor my mother and father. I wonder if maybe there's some virtues in our culture that if we didn't neglect them, if we paid them a little more attention and we sought to be them, it might change absolutely everything. While I was in college, I worked at a homeless shelter, and there was an older lady that worked at the homeless shelter. And each night by 6 o'clock, those who were staying overnight had to bring what they had to the front desk, and it would be put in a locker, and things would be set up so that they would have a place to sleep for the night. There was an older lady there, and I don't remember her name, but I do remember the way that she honored each of those people. As I worked alongside her, she would take each homeless person's bag or role or belongings or whatever they had their stuff in. She would ask them things like, is there any way that would you like for any of this to be washed? Would you like a cup of coffee? Now, these were people with a history and maybe some troubled times, often mental illness and often a criminal history who were coming in. And there was a reason that the bags had to be put away for the night, because God only knows what was in the bags. But never once did I feel like she looked at these people who were walking in the door as though they were somehow dishonorable. She was always looking for a way to honor them. She welcomed them as if they were her grandchildren coming into her home. And she took care of their needs and made sure they had the things that they needed. She didn't just say, there's the stuff if you want it. She would walk with them and help them decide if they needed anything that she had. You see, they were honored. And despite the fact that there might have been some folks there who had a history of violence, there might have been some folks there with a history of deep addiction and even some criminal past, most of the time that shelter was very peaceable. And I attributed it, over the month that I was there, I attributed it to this woman's honor of people. What would happen if we honored people like that in our church, in our workplace? What if we honored people like that as we passed them in the supermarket, as we waited to get on the elevator? What would happen if we welcomed people in and honored them just because of the preciousness of their humanity as a creation of God? And I wonder if we as a church can take this step of being honoring of people in a way to honor God. There's a story of Jesus who had been walking and doing his ministry, and he goes to his hometown. Of all the places in the world where you would think that the Messiah would be welcomed and his ministry would be loved and people would be ready to say, oh, our Jesus has come back. What happens is that Jesus goes with his disciples, and they've been doing all of these ministries, and things have been going moderately well in places. There have been a miracle or two happen. It was where Jesus was and where Jesus was honored. There were miracles. In Mark chapter 6, it says, when the Sabbath came, he, meaning Jesus, began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things, they asked. What's this wisdom that's been given to him? What are these remarkable miracles that he's performing? The people who were there and listening to Jesus and kind of hungry for what Jesus was doing, some of them began to ask these questions about him. And then the words began to change a little bit. It said, isn't this the carpenter? They were lowering his status because he was a rabbi who was also a carpenter by trade. He was in the position of rabbi, but they were kind of saying, well, isn't he a mere carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? I mean, they're looking at, hey, these are the people. We know this family. We know these people. Like, isn't this Mary's son? Like, don't you remember, like, she had that baby and said it was from God? Isn't this him? Aren't his sisters here with us? And because of the familiarity they thought they had with Jesus, they took offense to him teaching them about the Father. Jesus said to them, only in his hometown, amongst his relatives, and in his own house is a prophet without honor. The word without honor is atimos. It means to dishonor, treat as common or ordinary. What was happening in this place was the Son of God put in place by the Father right into their very midst in this moment of history. He's right in their presence, and they're treating him as if he's just common or ordinary. The word honor in the Greek is the word time, to value, respect, or highly esteem, to treat as precious, weighty, or valuable. Now, something you'll notice is in the places where Jesus is honored, there are often miracles that follow. However, in this place, it says Jesus isn't able because of the lack of faith. Jesus isn't because of the lack of faith, the lack of honor. He does not do many miracles. When it comes to honor, respect is earned, but honor is given. I get it. We may know somebody, we may know their past, we may know a little bit about them and think, well, I know what they did, so I don't have a boatload of respect. But maybe our respect for others, maybe our honor for others isn't directly correlated to our respect for them. Maybe our honoring of people, our respect for people depends upon their behavior, but our honor of them should be out of our respect for their Creator. Because God fearfully and wonderfully made the humans that we live amongst, we can give honor. In Mark chapter 6, it goes on to say Jesus could not do any miracles there. He laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Wanted to talk a little bit this morning about what does the Bible say and who does the Bible say that we're called to honor? I mean, the Bible's pretty clear that we're to honor our parents. And for some of you, you're like, well, my parents didn't maybe live a respectful life, or maybe maybe they had a bad past. Maybe one of them blew up our family or made a giant mess. And, I don't respect maybe the way they lived, but God is very clear in Exodus chapter 20 that there's a benefit to honoring your father and mother. Honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. That there's a benefit that comes to us from honoring others, esteeming them highly, recognizing them as precious. The scripture tells us to honor those in authority. It says, give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe them respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. The reality is, as I was sitting off to the side, and by the way, I don't know any of the history or the story of the little girl at the pool last week who threw her shoe at the back of her mother after her mother made her sit down. But I was thinking about how my parents might have responded to that dishonor. I don't know what the story was. Maybe she was tired. She was yelling. She threw the shoe. She yelled at her mother, I hate you. She wasn't very big at all. And honestly, as I sat there was part of me that wanted to be, and I know how hard it is to speak to an upset 6-year-old or 7-year-old. And I wanted to be like, little girl, your mother brought you on vacation to the beach. There are kids all around the world. And I'm sure that the reasoning would have been difficult at that moment because she was really a hot mess in the moment. But I also know that in that moment, it just happened to be in that moment, my kids were kind of doing their thing. We had to adjust our plans for the day. And I remember in that moment thinking, I was glad I wasn't in the same spot. I wasn't trying to judge the mother, but I was just glad that that meltdown wasn't happening on my end of the pool. And I remember later in the afternoon as we went and picked up some groceries for our room, our kids were like, hey, can we get some ice cream? And I was like, yeah, sure. You guys can get some ice cream. And the reason was that I felt honored as a dad at the way they had behaved. I was grateful for their behavior. And I was like, just pick out whichever one you want. Because as a father who felt honored, I felt like blessing my kids. We're to honor each other. Paul talks about this when he talks in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17. He says, the elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. He's saying, honor those who are teaching you. Jesus was telling the people that he recognized Paul was telling Timothy that honor was recognized, that giving people honor. Why? Because of the calling that is in all of us. We're called to honor each other. We're called, here's the thing. Each person you run into is a creation of the living God. Loved before they were born, made into the image of God, and we are God-like when we raise others up. When we honor others, we elevate them and raise them up. We put them first. It's why we train that when someone older comes into a room, or we often say, hey, would you like to sit down? We don't go through a test of who's most worthy for the chair, but we know that we're to honor each other. And to honor someone often means giving them our seat, giving them our place, giving them our preferences, and giving up our own preferences for the sake of others. There are places that when we go to Florida, I love to eat. I can eat nearly anywhere, but I love seafood. And when we go to Florida, we always try to eat as much seafood as possible, but there comes a point in the week when you've had a lot of fish and shrimp and oysters on the half shell and scallops and clams and seafood pasta. And yeah, I love seafood. But there comes a point in which you look around and you're like, everybody else is probably getting tired of eating burgers. Let's pick something different for the night. It's out of honoring them. It's not that maybe they're even paying the check or the bill, or it's not that it's their turn. It's that out of love for who they are, you're honoring others. It's saying, you know what? There's a family carrying their groceries to the elevator, and they've got arms full of bottled water, and it's saying, you know what, why don't you guys go ahead? It's recognizing the people who work at the front desk and recognizing that every day they do their best to make people feel welcomed, and people are coming from all sorts of places, maybe not honoring them. I watched people treat others in horrible ways last week with disrespect. It's like the moment you go into a big store and you have a bad experience, and so you chew out the checkout girl who's just trying to work, just trying to make $1, is not laying around just hoping for something to happen. She's actually gone to work. And so often we dishonor people, but what would happen if we were honoring to people? What would it look like if we looked people in the face and we looked out for them? And what would it look like if we were the people who straightened out the messy bags in the checkout line because the person working there was a person loved by God? What would it look like if we parked away from the building so that guests could walk in and feel honored that we were giving them honor? In 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17, he talks about offering those in authority and in teaching honor. You know, a few years ago, this passage struck me a little bit because a few years ago, I actually saw a president in person. Like, they were coming in for a speech here in town, and if I were to give a list of the greatest American presidents, this person wouldn't be very high on the list as far as to my agreement with them or my thoughts with them. But I was eating a little restaurant at the airport, and as I walked out of the restaurant to leave, like all along there had been cars outside, and there was some Secret Service around, and I didn't know what they were. They were just dudes dressed in black. And finally I asked someone, I was like, what are they, like, what is going on here? And they're like, oh, the president is coming in, one of the former presidents is coming into town to give a speech or a lecture. And while I maybe didn't necessarily politically vibe with this president, as I walked out the door, I thought, well, I'm just got to get out of here. They even had the doors blocked off for a minute at the restaurant where they're like, hey, we'd prefer that you not leave right now. And as I walked out of the door of the restaurant, standing across in a doorway was a Secret Service agent and this former president right here in Greencastle. And it was kind of an awe-inspiring event to see all that had gone into the security there. And as I walked out, he caught my eye and I caught his eye, and he said, hello. And all I could do was be like, good afternoon, Mr. President. Now, I didn't go into the details of his time as president, maybe what I thought of a thing or two that he had done, and I didn't go into any political details or anything, but I paid him honor because he had been a world leader who I felt in some ways deserved to be called by the title he had earned, to be honored. And he looked at me and was like, oh, I know you. No, he didn't. That's a total lie. It's a total lie. But in the reality, This is what we sometimes do in life when we don't. Is it possible that sometimes when you don't respond negatively, you're honoring someone else's humanity and you're honoring the image of God? To sit at the table with someone you vehemently disagree with about many things and yet treat them with common respect is a forgotten virtue. And I wonder how much more we could get accomplished, or how many more miracles would be amongst the people of God if we were honoring others. How many hearts could change just by honoring other people? Romans 12 verse 10 says it this way: love one another with brotherly affection. I love this part of the passage. Outdo one another in showing honor. I've got a couple really close friends. Now, part of it is that we were all raised not to borrow anything from each other. And part of it is we're not the kind of people that ever ask for help. We're not really good at saying, hey man, I could really use your help moving this weekend. Or I've got this tree down in my backyard and it's going to take me days to pick it up. It's just merely that we've kind of gotten in this battle of kind of trying to outdo each other in caring for each other. And one week, one guy will pick up the meal tab and the next week the other one will. And the reality is everybody still pays the same amount for dinner because they end up paying anyway, but it's the feeling of honor of like, this person recognizes that I'm here and they're honoring me by buying my dinner or showing up to help me with a task that's really my task to do. And when we step out in honor, we can absolutely change the culture. Those are some of the most meaningful friendships. And you know what's crazy about it? Because of the way that we honor each other, the connection we have with each other is phenomenal. Because of that, when life hits the fan, you have people to count on. We don't necessarily agree on everything. We don't think the same about everything. When I was in seminary, I was often taught by people who had more education than me, but I believed were philosophically and theologically incorrect. And I'd like to say I always got it right, but there were a couple of my professors that I disagreed greatly with on moral issues, and I disagreed greatly with on biblical interpretation, who, when I wrote in my papers and disagreed with them, they honored me as a person who had done the work of studying my point. And so therefore, I honored them when they spoke of their perspective and their opinion. And there's some of those people that to date, we are still on the opposite ends of the spectrum in our belief statement. But the reality is, when I see something going on in our life, I often congratulate them. I often honor them. There are professors from my seminary that see what is happening in our church, and they will message me and say, it's just great what's happening in your church, because they are honoring of other people. And I just believe we could change the culture. I believe on teams, on sports teams, in organizations, that just simply living in a culture of honor could entirely change an organization. We all want to be honored when we go to work and we show up every day and we give to an organization, when we serve in an organization, when we are sharing in an organization. We want to be given honor, which makes me want to give honor to the people who are on staff with me at work. It makes me want to give honor to the board who leads with me and helps go alongside me as we move forward. It makes me want to give honor to the volunteers who serve every week alongside. It makes me want to show honor to the people who are actively getting into the Word of God and growing. It makes me want to give honor to those who serve without being asked. It makes me want to honor the people who step in and give generously and honor God by honoring Him with their resources. Love one another with a brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. My friend, I believe that showing honor pays dividends. That showing honor and giving honor to people at the end, I believe it kind of puts in the figurative account in our life. And it adds value to our life. It allows us access into the lives of others in order to actually help when the time comes. And I believe one of the reasons that our culture is dishonoring is because people aren't honoring God. One of the reasons we don't honor other people is because we don't recognize the preciousness of those people to God. My mother-in-law will often tell me something and I don't know what to do with it. Like she will talk about our kids, or she will say something to me and she'll hug me and say, "Nathan, you're precious to me." I don't even know how to respond sometimes. It doesn't mean we always see, everybody sees eye to eye, but why is that? How are people able to honor others that way? It's because they have seen the preciousness of God and how he valued them. One of the reasons our culture is dishonoring is because people aren't honoring God. Never will you be more honoring God than when you serve others. Often the evidence of your love for God is shown by the last person you served. What would it look like if in America, rather than tearing down, rather than fighting and dishonoring each other, and if we would show each other honor and respect? World leaders have made huge headway during major difficult seasons by just honoring another leader in their presence. Psalm 22, verse 23 says, "You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him, revere him, all you descendants of Israel." Why do we praise God? Because we're showing honor to God. Why do we love our neighbor? Because we're honoring God. In Isaiah 29:13, it says, "These people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." That maybe the greatest evidence of Jesus in us is our own ability to recognize the preciousness of others to him. That maybe the change you want to see in others can be led by you because you've shown honor. So often we show opinions before we show honor. And I wonder if this neglected value, this neglected virtue, could absolutely shift your entire world if you begin to have a heart to outdo others in showing honor. That if the thing that we were known for was honoring others' humanity, if it might help the public perspective of Christians, if rather, and then open doors for us to be in places loving on people and connecting to people, ministering to people. And at the end of the day, maybe it would open up the door for the miraculous thing to change. And the thing that I believe is most miraculous is the change of a heart. Show each other honor by first recognizing that God, when it came to you, offered to elevate you through his creation of you and by the salvation he's offered you. That God, in his ultimate place of righteousness, came down from his throne, that the Son of God came down from heaven to live amongst others. And he lifted up the broken. He lifted up the hurting. He lifted up the theologically incorrect. He raised them up. He took the group of disciples who followed him. He called them out of places and pasts and history, and he brought them to a place of honor called disciple. And because of this, their lives were changed, and the impact of their life was changed, and miracles happened, and lives were changed. Are you willing to honor God by honoring others? By honoring your spouse, honoring your children. So many people get in these relationships where there's a tug of war. If you don't give me what I want, then I'm not giving you what you want. I'm not going to care about what you want until you give. But what would it look like? What does it look like in a relationship where two people are looking at each other, looking for opportunities to honor each other? That maybe going first in honor is the step to health. I love you, Bethel. Have a great week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Are you ready to take your next step? We would love to hear from you. You can send an email to hello@bethel.us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can let us know in the Bethel app. And speaking of the Bethel app, take a moment, if you haven't already, to go to your app store and search Bethel Putco to download our app. There's all kinds of great resources in the app. You can listen to messages, you can view the messages for Sunday morning, and you can also fill out a digital Connect card. You can do that today and each week to let us know that you're tuning in. You can also find some great information about our Bethel Kids Ministry and our Be the One student ministries. Also in the app, you can give. It's one of 3 ways you can give, with online giving at bethel.us/give, in our app, Bethel Putco, or through text. Hey, thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day and know that you are loved.